What is up, guys? Today I am finally ready to give you guys my Mac Pro review. Apple finally did it, guys. They built a proper Pro workstation machine again, and I am super happy about it. First off, I'd like to go over an exterior tour, then we'll take a look at the interior, and then we'll do some performance stuff. But anyhow, to start off with, you might notice that this design looks quite a bit more similar to the older cheese grater Mac Pros rather than the 2013 trash can that it replaced, and that is a very good thing. Of course, you can see that the computer is a typical tower PC and it uses aluminum for the majority of its construction, meaning the outer case here is all aluminum. And new for this model versus, let's say, like a cheese grater is that there is a stainless steel space frame underneath it, and that includes the handles and the feet. It's one frame and it's all one connected piece, which I'll show you in a second. But it looks really nice, and I am a huge fan of that. You might notice that we have a rather unique pattern on the front and back of the case. Apple calls this a lattice pattern, and some people aren't a huge fan of the way this looks, but personally I love it. I think it looks really cool, and of course it allows for maximum ventilation and cooling capacity, which is pretty important on a Pro machine. You can see that manufacturing this is probably not very easily. It looks like they drilled those concave holes on the outside and then drilled two more, or I guess three more holes from behind it. And it's really trippy. I personally, again, like I said, I really like the way this looks. You may notice there were no ports on the front of the machine, and that's because the ones that are on it are on the top. You can see that right here we have two Thunderbolt 3 connections right next to our power button and power LED, and then further back over here we have this latch, which we will get back to in a second. If we flip this beast around, you can see we have that same pattern on the back, again for ventilation, and we have a whack ton of expansion, which we'll get to in a minute. But the only card that Apple includes with the machine is their I/O card here at the top. You can see that all we really have on it is two USB-A ports, those are 3.1 obviously, two Thunderbolt 3s, and a headphone jack. Moving down a little bit, you can see towards the bottom there we have my two HDMIs coming off the graphics card. Of course, this is going to vary depending on which graphics card you choose. We have the power port here and dual 10 gigabit Ethernet, so that's pretty dope. Other than that, that is about it for ports that are included with the base model machine. Now, this computer's design is noteworthy because it prioritizes ease of opening and accessing the device. You may recall that we have a handle on the top here, and all we have to do to get inside is go ahead and take our hand, lift this handle, twist it 90 degrees, and from there the entire case lifts off. Something you might notice if you take a look inside this case is that the power button is connected by spring contacts exclusively, so that's pretty cool. You might also notice that there is some form of ventilation on the front and the back of the case. So, I mean, again, it's not like a dust filter, but it's better than just having these gigantic holes. As you can see, we now have 360-degree access to every part inside this computer. If I go ahead and turn it around here, you can see that we have complete access to every side. Now, you might be looking at this and go, Ryan, this looks pretty much just like a standard desktop tower PC. And you would be correct. That is the beauty of this machine. Over here you can see we have our CPU heatsink with this nice Mac Pro beauty plate on it. This one has the 8-core 3.5 GHz Intel Xeon, and Apple says this CPU is capable of dissipating up to 300 watts of power, which is significantly more than the TDP of my chip, and I believe even the highest end Xeons you can get are only about 205 watts maximum. So it's nice to see that this heatsink is more than capable of handling the processors. Over here you can see that we have standard SATA ports, which is pretty awesome, and then we have our 10-pin power for those there. Apple does sell a drive cage that you can put up here. It pretty much sits on these pins here that allows you to use regular SATA drives with the Mac Pro, so that is an option, but you do have to buy that little cage. Here we have a USB-A internal port, and this is mostly for people who have those digital software keys, like for Adobe products and other music making software and whatnot. It's so they can plug that in there and have their hardware key inside the computer, not taking up a port on the back. So that's pretty nice. As you might be able to tell if I zoom out a little bit here, you can see we have an absolute whack ton of PCI slots. You can see that Apple only populates it with their I/O card, which we went over before. And then besides that, I think we have a total of 8 PCI slots here. And guys, check this out. Check out this PCI latch. Ooh, oh baby, that feels awesome. Moving on, down here we have our GPU. This is an AMD Radeon Pro 580X. You may notice it looks a little bit different than standard modules or standard GPUs, and that is because Apple has created a new Mac Pro expansion module, or MPX module for short. Now basically what that is, if you look up here, you can see we have our standard PCI X16 slot there, but we have a slot behind it that kind of piggybacks off the card, and this slot is able to provide up to 475 watts of additional power, and it also provides Thunderbolt capabilities. So if you use Apple's GPUs, I believe these two Thunderbolt ports up here are connected to the GPU, so you can run external displays that way, which is nice. Now of course, because it's a standard PCI slot, this does maintain compatibility with any off-the-shelf PCI graphics card, as long as it has macOS support. And so you're good there. You don't have to buy these MPX modules, but it's noteworthy to note that these things are fanless, so besides the fans that are built into the case, these aren't going to make any extra noise, whereas with an aftermarket PC card it might. Moving on down, you can see below it we have this another bar here. This is actually the 1400 watt power supply, and it is modular. It's only held in with one screw, I believe, over here, and that is about it for the front of the machine. If we take a look at the back here, you can see it's fairly barren, but under these two shrouds here are actually our RAM modules. And if I take one of these off here, you can see that we have a nice 6 DIMM slots, and of course there are 6 more down here. So that is a total of 12 RAM slots, and this computer can support up to 1 or 1.5 terabytes of RAM, depending on your configuration. Now that's pretty awesome. Mine only has 48 gigabytes, which is more than enough for what I'm doing with it, and you can see that I have a total of 6 slots free, so I can populate those later and have even more memory. You can see right here we have another bar. This one does come off, but it is just the PC speaker, and this thing, I'll demo this later, but this thing sounds way better than it has any reason to. Down here we can see we have a blower fan right here. This of course draws air across the memory modules and through this blower here, which has the SSDs housed into it, and then exhausts it out the back. You can see those two little slots there in that plastic piece. That's where the SSDs are housed. Now mine has the 1 terabyte configuration, and so that's actually two 512 gigabyte SSDs in RAID 0. So that allows for not only you get the benefit of an NVMe PCI SSD, but they're in RAID, so they're even faster than they would be otherwise. I absolutely love this. The drives are super fast. Although it's worth noting that these SSDs are tied to the T2 chip inside the machine, so they're not user serviceable or replaceable, and the machine will not boot without these installed. So you're kind of screwed there, but you can take a PCI Express card and add your own SSDs that way, and you can actually use them as a boot volume. The beautiful thing about this system is that most components can be taken out with either no tools at all or only a Phillips screwdriver. You may notice on these MPX modules here we have Phillips screws, and I believe to get the heatsink off it requires a Torx bit, but those are standard drivers, and like I said, this thing is probably the most repairable Apple product that has come out in the better part of 8 years. You may notice up front here that we have 3 large cooling fans, and the design of these fans is interesting because the blades actually spin with the shroud. It's all one piece. So that is a little bit different than your typical fan, and also these fans also vary their speeds independently from each other to go ahead and try to spread the noise frequencies across a wide range, and so this results in an incredibly quiet computer. And I believe Apple also said that these fans are capable of moving up to 340 CFMs of air, so that is plenty of cooling capacity. I truly believe that this is the most over-engineered, best-built desktop computer in existence. I mean, nobody else is using stainless steel for a frame and having the entire computer being constructed of metal. I mean, again, everything is metal except for this fan shroud, pretty much. Even the smallest things like that PCI latch that I showed you and the internal PC speaker, which I can go ahead and put input a clip of the sound quality. Are just top notch. Apple spared no expense with this computer, and there's no part of this computer that you'll find that feels any instance of cheap. This thing is built amazingly, and I love that about it. With that said, we can go ahead and slide the case back on. And we'll go ahead and hook her back up. Next, I want to talk a little bit about the performance of this machine. Here is a Geekbench I ran the other day. As you can see, we have 1051 for a single core score and 8400 for a multi. Now, the single core is slightly worse than an i9 9900, and the multi-core score is pretty much exactly on par. So I think that's pretty cool, you know, given that this computer, the CPU, even at the base model, is about as powerful as an i9 9900, which of course is a relatively high-end Intel chip. So pretty happy with the performance there. And I've noticed versus my 16-inch MacBook Pro that this thing feels just as fast, if not faster, day to day. Of course, I've used Final Cut on it and stuff, and it's been very nice. I'm pretty happy with the performance, even on the base model. And of course, like I said, the beauty of this computer is that you can upgrade the components over time. So next I want to demo how awesome the cooling system is on this thing. As you can see, I am encoding a video with Handbrake, which is very CPU intensive. And if we look at Power Gadget here, you can see that the CPU is using 130 watts. We are pretty much pegged at the maximum frequency. We're running at 3.75 to 4 gigahertz. And yeah, no throttling to speak of. Moving down here, you can see that our temperature is 55 degrees Celsius, which is pretty darn cool, especially for the CPU being pegged at 100%. And I ran this test yesterday when it was a little warmer out, and it never got over 68 degrees Celsius. So you can also see that the fans are running pretty much at minimum speed almost, and so this thing is still incredibly quiet even when being pushed to the maximum. Again, the cooling system is very overpowered, and that's something that you want to be overpowered. So I think even the highest end 28 core Xeon would be able to be cooled more than adequately by this cooling system. Now I know some of you are going to be asking still, why did I buy this? This computer, my configuration at least, this computer was $6,400 before tax, so that is no small amount of money. And although I sold my 16-inch MacBook Pro, which paid for about half of it, that's still not a small amount of money to be spending on a computer. So I know some people are going to have some questions as to why I didn't just buy an iMac or keep my MacBook Pro. And again, the reason for that is this computer gives you a combination of three things that you haven't been able to get in a single Mac in quite a long time. That is good performance for today, vast upgradability options for the future, and of course native Mac OS. So that is pretty much the reason I didn't just buy an iMac or something, because those things aren't easy to work on. They're very difficult to repair, in fact, and there is no expandability there. Whereas this, I can add PCI cards if I want more ports, or, you know, upgrade the CPU, I can add some more RAM. It's like a desktop tower PC, so that I was willing to pay the extra premium to have that benefit. And of course, I also like the design of the case and everything. I think it's a beautiful computer, and it's built very well. Now, I know some of you are also going to have the question of why didn't I just do a Hackintosh? And personally, I really don't like Hackintoshing just because it's basically Mac OS, but without the stability and ease of use of it. And so, you know, I don't want to have to deal with installing a system update and having it break stuff, or setting everything up to make it work on the interim. I don't want to deal with that. The reason I use Macs is so I don't have to do that stuff. And so that was the main reason for not going the Hackintosh route, even though I probably could have got more powerful hardware. Again, my reference point is my 16-inch MacBook Pro, and this configuration of Mac Pro is a little bit more powerful than my loaded 16-inch. So for now, that's good enough. And like I said, in the future, I have plenty of options if I want to give it some more horsepower. So with that said, that's going to about wrap it up for me, guys. I love this Mac Pro, and I plan on using it for many years, and it's an awesome computer. So I'd like to thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video.